There's no bigger man on campus these days than senior linebacker Kyle Van Noy. In fact, with the exception of Jimmer, he may be the biggest in 2 decades. Jeff Benedict and Armin Kantayan co-authored the new book, The System, The Glory and Scandal of Big-Time College Football. And we welcome Jeff to True Blue. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be here.
If you were to recommend Kyle Van Noy for a job, how would you start the process of that letter of recommendation?
Integrity. Really important word in the world today, no matter what job you want to be, whether it's a football player or a lawyer or whatever. That was something that stood out with me really early with Kyle, is that he's honest and he's unafraid to tell the truth. And that goes a long way with people, particularly if you make a mistake and you own up to it. A lot of people today won't own up to Kyle owned up.
This is not a BYU book, it's a college football book, but there's a lot of BYU in it, and you spent a lot of time with Kyle in his process of choosing BYU and his experience here. As you say, integrity, where does that come from through your interviewing process?
Well, I'll never forget the day, it was actually last year after the opening game against Washington State.
Right.
And the next day, we were on the BYU practice field, just he and I. I'd done some interviews with him up to that point, so we were starting to get to know each other pretty well. And I knew he'd been arrested for DUI in high school, and to me that wasn't very interesting. Everybody knew about that, not a big deal. But as we were talking, I asked him, how did you get here? And he said, well, there's more to that story than you or anybody else knows. And then he proceeded to tell me that there'd been a second scrape with the law. The thing that fascinated me was Kyle was a juvenile at the time, and nobody would have known about that second incident. In fact, nobody did know, but he and his parents and a couple of law enforcement officials in Reno. Bronco Mendenhall didn't know, BYU didn't know, and they would have never found out had he not used his own money and got on a plane and flown up here unannounced and showed up at Bronco's office. And that's one of the best scenes in the system, is when Bronco looks up and smiles like, Kyle, what are you doing here? Like, it's a great moment. And then he looks in his eyes and it's not a great moment. And, you know there's a problem. And they come in and Kyle's, biting his lip and looking away. And Bronco says, let me help you. What happened? And then Kyle just tells him what happened. Yeah. And it's unvarnished. It's just raw truth. And now Bronco's got to make a decision, like, what do you do? And Bronco goes to the AD and the dean and says, here's what happened. And at first, I think there's a reluctance on their part, like this could be trouble down the road. And Bronco's like, no, actually, most of the people I deal with don't tell the truth like this. This guy's owning this problem, and I want to help him. And that's the beginning, the genesis of Kyle's journey to BYU. To me, that's off the charts, fascinating, compelling when you're talking about college football.
How does a guy go from that start to being the face of the entire program?
Well, I'll tell you, as an outsider, this is what's fascinating for me, because I'm not from here and I'm not a BYU guy, and I'm following Kyle though last year. When I showed up here for the opening game last year, and I was staying at a hotel in Salt Lake, and I'm driving down to Provo, and I'm billboard after billboard that's BYU, but it's Kyle. And I'm thinking, isn't this interesting? 3 years ago, this is a kid who, when he walked onto this campus, felt like he absolutely did not belong here and would never fit in here. Yeah. And in 3 years' time, he's the face of the university. I mean, literally the face of the university.
Why do the fans just love this guy?
Well, I think they like him because he's like Superman on the field. Football at the end of the day is a spectacle. We want to be entertained when we watch football. Guys, someone like him who flies through the air when he makes a sack and who's always around the football, he scores touchdowns and he's on defense. And he doesn't have a big mouth. I mean, that's the other thing that's really likable about him, is he speaks with his play. He just goes out and plays every day, and he plays hard, and he doesn't take a play off. And it's easy to root for guys like that. Talent plus don't take plays off. It's like Larry Bird. Every play he's going all out. You love that in an athlete, whether he's football, basketball, and Kyle's got that.
A lot of us think we know Kyle because we've interviewed him a million times, but in reading your book, I learned a whole lot in here, his decision to come to BYU, his decision to come back to BYU and pass on the NFL, and some of his thoughts. And there's a lot more than Kyle Van Noy in this book, but it's a fascinating read. And where can folks get it? I assume everywhere at this point.
Amazon's the best place because it's instant and it's cheap, you know, because they sell it at such a deep discount. I say that as a writer, but it's true. I mean, they're the best place. Barnes & Noble, all the big bookstores have it.
All right, it's a good read. I highly recommend it.